How long does it take to get castings once you start? It could be a few weeks up to 4 to 6 months. We'll cover the two factors that make up the biggest difference in today's episode of Coffee and Compost. My name is Steve Churchill, and this is the Urban Worm Company. So this is a really common question. People want to know how long they need to wait after they start their worm bins before they can harvest worm castings. How long it takes to get worm castings depends on what you're vermicomposting and how you're vermicomposting it. The fastest production for worm castings I've seen is just a few weeks, but this is only possible when the material you've begun vermicomposting is already partially decomposed. Large-scale worm castings producers often use a decomposed material called Reedsedge peat, which is way different than the sphagnum peat moss that you're familiar with. This material is very broken down, already rich in microbes, and the work that the worms do simply finishes off what nature has been working on for months. A more common material available to most of us is leaf mold, which is a fancy way of saying broken down leaves. One of my most experienced customers and resellers of the Urban Worm Bag is Marianne Smith of Valley View Worms. Most of what she uses in her urban worm bags is leaf mold supplemented with a little bit of food waste from a local juice bar. For the in-home vermicomposter, leaf mold may not be the best idea, as leaf mold is often accompanied by critters like roly-polies, mites, springtails, and other critters that you or your wife or husband or partner or roommate may not want in the house. But if you don't mind those critters, then vermicomposting with stuff that's halfway decomposed can speed up your progress a lot. On the other hand, if you're starting with cardboard waste and fresh food waste, especially food waste like broccoli stalks, that stuff can take a lot longer to break down by the microbes and worms. A new worm bin with fresh materials needs what I call a ramp-up period, where the bacteria colonize the waste and fragment it, which creates more surface area for microbes to colonize, which accelerates the fragmentation, creating a virtuous cycle where the organic matter and the microbes form an awesome feeding ground for the worms. But in a new worm bin, starting with fresh, non-decomposed material just takes a while. Whether you're using an urban worm bag or another bin, starting from scratch probably means you need 4 to 6 months before you harvest. So what you're vermicomposting makes a huge difference. How you're vermicomposting makes a difference too. If you're using a simple bucket or Rubbermaid bin and you're constantly adding food waste and bedding to this bin, then it never really gets finished unless you stop adding new material to it for at least several weeks to allow the worms and microbes to finish whatever's in the container. And then you got to go through a somewhat tedious process of separating the worms from the castings and the coarser, undigested organic matter. We've got a guide to harvesting found in the video description below. Using buckets or single compartment bins is called a batch method and typically requires a full emptying of the bin and starting over with fresh materials. This is different than continuous flow vermicomposters like the Urban Worm Bag, where you feed from the top and harvest from the bottom. Now, if you're starting a new Urban Worm Bag with fresh material, you shouldn't harvest until the 4 to 6 month point and until the bag is 3/4 full. Even then, your first harvest is likely to be mostly unprocessed bedding and material, which can go right back in the top for another trip through. The good thing about continuous flow systems is that they're harvested from the bottom far below the active vermicomposting zone closer to the top of the bag. This means you never have to fully disrupt the ecosystem of microbes and worms that are doing the hard work for you. If you're starting a new urban worm bag or other type of bin and you want to speed things up a bit, then replicating Marianne's approach by using crumbly decomposing leaf mold could be the ticket. So to summarize, if your worms are just finishing off material that has already started decomposing, then you could conceivably harvest worm castings in about 8 weeks, maybe even less. But if you're starting with waste straight from the kitchen or the paper shredder, then you're looking at 4 months or more. Okay guys, so I've been doing vermicomposting for quite a few years now and helping others recycle their organic waste as well. Most people make one or more of 6 most common mistakes in vermicomposting, and I created a fun, easy to read guide about these mistakes called Rookie Vermicomposting Mistakes That Everyone Makes. If you click the little link on the screen right about now, you can sign up to get that guide immediately. It's a quick, easy read and will help you steer clear of some really common vermicomposting landmines. All right, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Coffee and Compost.